Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brad Fleeman, and I run the cybersecurity team for Ivanti for North America. I'd like to welcome everybody to our webinar series on priorities of the CISO for 2023. And with me today as our guest speaker is Dr. Joel Fulton. Joel has run security teams for some of the largest organizations in the world, including Boeing, Starbucks, Symantec, Google, and Splunk. 2017, Security Magazine named him the most influential security person of the year. Joel also has received a PhD of information assurance, which makes him a ton of fun at parties, but is currently the CEO and co-founder of Lucidum. It's a cybersecurity attack surface management solution, and he's also co-founder of the Silicon Valley CISO Investment Group. So Joel has spent a lifetime working in IT, working specifically in the security operations group, and I'm really excited to talk to Joel today and for him to share his experiences with all of us.
Thank you, Brad. I'm glad to be here. This should be fun.
Before we get into the topic of the top CISO priorities for FY23, I did want to ask Joel to kind of back up a little bit and look at, given his experience in his past, how has he built a foundation and what does he use to measure that foundation? I know a lot of CISOs are focused on the NIST framework as the baseline, but what are the actual applications of that NIST framework, and how's that actually going to help CISOs of our largest organizations today mitigate the threats that are coming at them?
That's a good question, Brad. I think that some of the key words you hit on there are very meaningful to me, and that is foundation, fundamentals. I'd even go as far as to say rudiments. There are basic practices that often are, I don't know, they're not cool, or they don't make you look good, or maybe they're not intellectually interesting, that actually resolve most of the issues that we face. So if you look back through 2022 and look at the headline breaking breaches and incidents, there were not any of those that were a just revealed zero day that had some new technical prowess that overleaped your known tooling, process, and people. They were, I didn't know this thing was here. I didn't know it wasn't patched, or I knew it wasn't patched, but we take 184 days to patch most of our stuff, and and so it's hygiene, which isn't very sexy unless it's not there. I think that the discipline of doing the basics, of iterating and ensuring you have a firm foundation, are the key things that you then use as a layer to build what's interesting to you on top of it. My favorite quote for the CISO is a Bruce Lee quote, where Bruce Lee said, "I don't fear the man that has practiced 10,000 kicks one time. I fear the man that's practiced one 10,000 times." And there is a discipline that security should be delivering that isn't sexy, it isn't interesting, maybe it's not even intellectually challenging. It's a moral thing. It's a steadiness. But when that's accomplished, you aren't subject to things like the SolarWinds attack or the Exchange or the VPN that's open, or those are all gone. And now you can focus on interesting things.
So looking at the fundamentals, as you say, it sounds great, right? You're going to do the repetitive things that aren't sexy, that may be a little bit boring, but specifically, what are those? As you look to build out your organization, because you have to communicate downstream, because we are talking about thousands of people that affect the Fortune 500 IT organizations, right? The gaps and the communication layers and everything else. How do you get everybody kind of marching to have that same philosophy about building a strong infrastructure?
I think that's an excellent question, and it is it's a key that is uniquely customized to the enterprise or organization that you're serving as a CISO, because it's about we talk about people, process, and technology, and I think we're saying them in the order of importance. People matter more than process. Process matters more than technology. And the relationship with people will elicit a lot of you didn't know, or you couldn't have done, or you couldn't accomplish. And so getting a common, to be a little nerdy, getting a common open API with the rest of the businesses, both up, down, and sideways in the organization, is crucial. And I found that the API, the framework for talking about security, I love NIST for this. Well, I don't love all of NIST. I love the NIST basics. Just take identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And you can do security explanation on the back of a bar napkin. You can solve problems. You can see where your center of gravity is or should be in a given instance. And everybody kind of gets identify, protect, detect, respond, recover when they think about what do they do when they drive. You're identifying the risks around you. You're driving defensively. That's protection. If something happens, you've got insurance. There's my response. So like it fits life. And if you take away this security is special and it has its own language and it's a cult and you've got to be inaugurated. None of that's true. It's just the way you live your life. That helps break down that communication barrier so we can talk about security like it's a real thing that you're invited to participate in. To me, that's the key to opening that door.
Yeah, I think using common language is the right communication method within the entire organization. We all get caught up, whether it's security or it's data analytics, whatever it may be, is like somehow there's got to be some magic AI that's just floating all around the infrastructure or the ethosphere. And it's going to magically go see what's the threat that's out there and go prevent it before it even gets there. I've got my own opinion about artificial intelligence and what role it really plays in security, but love to hear some of the thoughts that you have on what is the practical application versus what is just the noise.
Yeah. So let's say that artificial intelligence is a tool, and it might be a particularly adept tool. It might be a tool that doesn't fit. But for my framework, let me put it in that tool category, because you're only asking the same question that people ask: what's the advantage of having Siri or Alexa in my house? And so some of those are convenience, and so there's some AI things that are convenient there, but you pay extra for convenience. And we are entering and have entered a time, 2023, where most CISOs are hearing your budget this year will be reduced by 5, 10, 50, some number. And that budget reduction comes along with its twin brother blessing, which is also keep doing what you've been doing, right? So you got to maintain the same level of identify, protect, detect, and response, and we're going to give you 85% of the money to continue to do that. And this is normal. This isn't an opportunity for CISOs to complain or be bitter about it. This is what can I do with what I've got? And then you start looking at what are the advantages AI gives me to solve specific problems. So let me take just one little step back here. The one thing every security and risk-related business function in the world has that cybersecurity doesn't is an actuarial table. When you look at insurance, when you look at cars, when you look at crash tests, when you look everything, bank vaults, they're rated for tools and time, right? Everything has a measure on it that says this protective, detective, responsive control is effective under these conditions for this kind of dollar value. Everybody has that except us. And that puts us at a huge disadvantage. So the one place where we could strike gold that would bring us on par with insurance companies in understanding risk is the application of, well, I won't even say AI. Really, it's math. We need some statistical derivation. We need the sharing of data. I need to know what is the effect on my overall risk when I raise my budget in this area or accomplish these controls. So that's where I would like to see the AI ML statistics drive us. Instead of accomplishing things I don't understand, make me understand what I ought to accomplish. That's my opinion on the AI role.
So it's really just getting back to, I know what you talk about quite a bit at Lucidum, is being able to see, right? We're all in the dark all the time. The complexity of software grows exponentially. The legacy software increases that complexity because systems no longer communicate within each other. I mean, building this, colossal mass of tech and then trying to unwind it so that you have full visibility in it, and then apply, as you said, the AI to that to measure the effectiveness against it. How do you even start, right? Where do you even start in that process? Looking at the entire infrastructure, looking at what's missing, and go about filling those gaps.
Well, let me tell you about a time when I didn't do it well, and what we did about it. So we had a third-party review. I had just joined an enterprise, and they'd done a third-party review on the grade of security. And everybody has a grade, right? You bring in a third party and they give you an A, B, C, D, E, or they give you a comparables, kind of like buying a home, like you're sort of like this company and you're a little worse than that company. You get some sort of grade. And so they rated us using NIST, which I thought, hey, that's terrific. I just showed up and I got a grade and it's based on NIST. This will be helpful. And so in our identify, our ability to see and understand, what do I own? Who are the humans and the identities touching what I own? Where do those data go? So that's kind of your identify column. And they gave us a C. We're kind of average there. And then in our ability to protect things, well, like most everybody else out there, we were a B. We could do better, but throwing more money at it is probably going to have diminishing returns. And then in our detect and respond, we had a C in detect, but we were a B in respond. And that's not unusual. If you get in a lot of car wrecks, you're probably pretty good at getting out of car wrecks. So that detect and respond made sense. And then recover, well, we know we're in the cloud, so nobody paid attention to it. So we're probably a C there too, right? So that was our grade. And then they averaged this. You got 2 C's and you got 2 B's and you got 1 A. We're going to give you a B plus. And that was the opportunity to use this NIST IDPRR format to display where leverage comes in. So you ask the question, where do you start? And nobody gets the opportunity to start new. You don't walk in with no computers, no tech, and say, we're going to build this secure from the ground up. You start with something. And the important place to start is in that identify bit. So you take this report card I got, and I got a C in identify. Well, that's a 70%. Right? I got kids in school. I know what a 70 is. And then my protect was a B. Well, the B is an 80, but it isn't an 80 out of 100. It's an 80 out of what that prior phase passed me. And so now I have an 80% of the 70 that I identified. So now my net rolling score is a 56. So there's no way I'm getting a B plus out of this, because in designing my strategy, in designing the company strategy before I arrived, thought wasn't given to the sequential nature of these control categories. And so if I didn't identify something, the thought previously had been, well, let's emphasize the protective measure. So the strategy for that first year, we called it Go Hio, stood for getting our house in order. And the emphasis was on identify. Because if you see something, if I identify a new endpoint, if I stop an engineer from pulling my agents off and pulling the operating system off and installing Ubuntu on it, if I stop those things from happening, well then they're automatically part of my protective scheme. They've automatically got my Ivanti agent on them. They've automatically got endpoint protection. And if they do have that, well, now my detection is working. And so kind of like an investment, the earlier you start, the more compound interest pays off. So too with controls. And so the sole factor of identifying and spending a year, no kidding, a year, identifying what we had and making sure we did the basics in Protect, stopped all of the issues that had been in that preceding year. It's a lot of work. It wasn't very sexy. We got rid of a lot of tools, but we did the right thing. And then once you understand how to play music, then you can riff and play jazz. But the other way around doesn't work.
In your experience, how often do you see that work go undone? Right, I got my score, I got the results, I met with the cybersecurity legal team and my CFO, and I said our insurance coverage should be okay because we got to be. You know, what is the real reality versus kind of the perception everybody has of everybody's cybersecurity posture?
When I've asked cybersecurity leaders, how would you rate and you never start with identify because they know it's coming. You start with protect. Like, how would you rate yourself? And so, like, if you're watching this, I'd ask you, how would you rate your enterprise in protect? And you know what protect is, right? It's encryption and it's endpoint, and it's firewalls and it's cloud tools, and people are working from home, so VPN is certainly going to roll into this protect. And so, how would you rate yourself? Like, how am I doing on protect? And you're probably going to give yourself a B plus or an A minus. Because that's kind of where we probably all really are. And then you move to detect and respond and ask yourself, and keep them separate, how well do I do detecting things? I've worked at enterprises where we had 10 million alerts a month with the capacity to handle 100 incidents a month. And it was key to us to be excellent at detect, not just to see it, but to triage and quickly get it down to something that could be responded to. So how would you do in detect and respond? And you'll probably give yourself a pretty honest grade, and then take a second and look back to category 1 and ask yourself, the thing that feeds all of this, the thing that feeds my A- in protect, the thing that's feeding my B+ in detect, how well am I doing there? And most people think it's a rhetorical question. You've got to be kidding. You're not really going to ask me that question, are you? Because everybody knows how I'm doing there. I'm doing an F+. I'm doing an I don't know there. And so that one change makes effective and efficient all the other controls you have in place.
No, that's awesome, Joel. I guess the building out this prioritization of looking at how you clean the house up before you can actually do all the really cool things to make yourself a world-class cybersecurity organization. There's a lot of tools that get implemented, that have been implemented, right? That all talk about speaking to each other and everything else. There's a lot of noise out there about DEX, right? Digital employee experience, what it is, what it isn't. Is it a framework? Is it a philosophy? Is it a tool set? Sure, depending who you talk to. How do you view the combination of that discovery and endpoint management and asset management and software delivery and the self-serving, self-healing, self-reporting, all those things that normally roll into when people talk about DEX? Is that something that would be adaptable, right? Or do you still have to clean the house first, but how would you prioritize going about building this full employee experience organization so you can level out the reporting that you need to the board?
So I think it's important to have a target in mind first. And that target may shake the purity of your initial approach. So I'm going all in on identify. And I did for a year, all in on identify. But in terms of the time spent on the clock in a ratio, 20% of my time went into some detect and respond because we were building out our own SOC. And there's things that needed to serve the business. And so as much as that discipline is required, so every day you're going to brush your teeth and do push-ups. That's the kind of discipline that's going to get you where you want to go. There are some days where you're stuck on an overnight flight and you're not going to be able to do your push-ups. So there are some days where you sacrifice those priorities. So that whole digital experience, it's not just one of the cool things for a CISO is too often you're caught being described as the department of no. The other thing that most CISOs try to do is we want to be a business enabler. And you'll hear this quite a bit among CISOs. I'm tired of being considered a cost center. I want to be a business enabler. And we really tie ourselves in knots trying to make that happen. And we look for things like, I have increased the ability of us to satisfy third-party due diligence so we can go through procurement more quickly because I've got all of our ducks in a row. Or I have reduced our liability, and that helps us with some of the positioning for this RFP. But everything a CISO does to enable a business, which we all desire to do, is kind of a bank shot. It's indirect, and it's unsatisfying because we watch the CIO and we watch the CFO, and the grass is always greener on the other side. We watch the head of sales, and they're contributing to the business. And here am I telling people, hey, don't do that and stop doing that. And I want to be one of those that's helping move the business forward. This is the game changer. That is the only thing I have seen that is a not indirect. It is a direct enablement of the business. And you can go from being, I'm a department of no, to being, I'm a department of yes and. Not only am I going to give you that access and make sure the streaming patching is done and make sure you're currently up to date, and I'll never allow your Xbox on my network, even though we used to, because now my asset discovery is locked down. But every time you bring on a laptop and you were out of cycle or you bought something from Best Buy, I'm going to enable it using all of my controls, and you won't even know that it's happening except for a couple of yes, I agree checkboxes. That enabling that user to do things securely and just passing it right on by, it is the only direct shot I have seen that allows a CISO to say, I'm enabling the business directly.
Yes, so it's not really the digital employee experience, it's really the security employee experience.
It's our contribution to that digital.
So bring us back to what we started with the topic, right? The top priorities. We know 23, we've seen the reductions of headcount. Some of the largest organizations out there, Microsoft and Google and others. So CISOs have less capital to deploy. There's still multiple challenges around, just getting the house in order. And the persistent threats are only become more extreme. Do you see any changes in the type of threats that are happening?
So phishing has gotten a lot more slick. ChatGPT has enabled it. You can, and I know I'm not breaking news here, but pay attention to the fact that ChatGPT can learn your style. And so the ability for somebody to listen to an investor call where a CFO is describing investor returns, take that transcript, feed it to ChatGPT, and now write an email in the voice of my CFO is easy. Like, all of that is pretty easy. And so those phishing attacks are not just to get a credit card or but they're the means by which software is being snuck into the environment. And that turns into ransomware. It turns into C2, command and control software. It turns into remote access. It turns into lateral movement. That's a big deal. And so the ability of an attacker to fool users has skyrocketed. And then the phishing access through email is not the only thing that you're worried about. You think about the places users congregate and QR codes and the activation of software through those, and the access is proliferating. The targeting is becoming more precise. And so to me, it is even more crucial that your foundation is sealed against these attacks, because you don't have the ability to fight novel attacks and fight rudimentary attacks, because those rudimentary attacks win every time. The novel attacks, you'll watch people fumble. You'll watch the attacker learn. You'll be able to catch them before inside their OODA loop. But those foundational attacks, they're long-standing. There's no hesitancy. It's not going to show up in your logs. They're in, they're done, they got it, they're moving on, and you didn't know it happened. So to me, if you go to boxers fight on their legs, it sounds weird, but every boxer says it's true. That's why they run. They fight on their legs. They don't fight with them, they fight on them. You fight on your foundation. And so when you're defending your environment, you aren't defending the specific attacks that are new and novel and 0 day and keeping up on the ISC Stormcast and looking to see what the NSA says. Those are not the salient, harmful attacks. It is the ones that are in your foundation, where there's holes, where you're fighting on shaky legs. That is the emphasis that I would seek this year. And then there's two reasons for it. If I am attacked by something that broke on Wired 2 minutes ago, and I discover, shoot, I've been hit by this, and I go to the board, there's a reasonableness there. Nobody expected me to read into the future and know that there was this new quantum decryption tool that suddenly made our SSL keys visible to the enemy. Nobody would expect that. And so I've been diligent with the board. They're not going to say to me, why didn't you predict the future? However, if I come and say, we've had ransomware that has taken over one of our sites in Poland and all of our systems there are inaccessible, how did that ransomware get in? Well, we didn't patch those systems. Now I'm not a good business partner. Now that appearance of negligence, whatever my excuses and reasons are, it's easier to explain, it's easier to get buy-in, and it's easier to rationalize we were hit by something unique than it is to say we were hit by something old because we were focusing on other stuff. So that foundation, there ought to be a sense of pride in your job. There ought to be a sense of being stalwart. My service is foundational and steady, and then we'll go chase the interesting stuff.
So it just goes back to the basic fundamentals that have been around forever, right? If you understand what's in your infrastructure, if you understand how to secure users accessing either the network or direct applications, if you understand when things do have holes, how to patch them, how to automate that process through prioritization of vulnerabilities, how do you look at all the intelligence that's in self-healing today that you can execute on. If you can get all that deployed holistically to give you the visibility and the I can see moment of your infrastructure, that's all you can ask any CISO in any organization to do. Lock up the house. Things are going to happen that we cannot predict because they're new, but the new ones are going to be the anomalies. And the stuff that's going to cost businesses money, organizations, reputational hits, everything else, we can fix today with the right infrastructure.
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
Well, Joel, I appreciate it. I know we're on time. Quick question on the work that you've been doing as co-founder of Lucidum with the CISO organization and the entire IT organization in general. Can you spend a few minutes just talking a little bit about that?
Well, you can tell I'm passionate about the foundations, about getting your house in order. So we built and designed Lucidum to be a attack surface management solution. So specifically, identifying what you have, what the systems are, the identities that are accessing them, and then what kind of data they store, transmit, and process. So build me that full picture, and then make it useful to me. Don't make this silo stand over here all alone. So Lucidum is built to be headless. We plug into your Ivanti solution, your SIM, your ITSM, so that the thing that you're good at, that you've spent money on, that you've trained people on, now is energized by knowing everything that's out there, who's using it, and what it's doing. No more unknowns is our promise to our customers. And so that's our lane, and that's why I'm excited to talk to you and be part of the Ivanti circle of friends. Thank you for asking.
Well, we're a big tent, Joel, but thank you for being part of it. And again, thank you for your time today. And thanks everybody else for attending the first in multiple series on cybersecurity.